TellyCast.
Hi, I'm Justin Crosby, and welcome to another TellyCast. TV industry programme buyers from all around the world gathered in London last week for the latest iteration of the London Screening Showcase event. The world's biggest international distributors showed off their latest programming catalogues across over 20 lavish events across the week. And on this week's show, it's an all-German affair, as I sat down for a chat about how the event was shaping up for WeltN24 buyers Ulrike Brandt and Karsten Schrader, channel owner and distributor Gerrit Kemming of Quintus Studios, and Fremantle International CEO Jens Richter. It's coming right up on this week's TellyCast. My first guest on this week's show is Jens Richter, CEO of Fremantle International. Jens, hello, how are you?
I'm very well, Justin. Thank you much.
Really good to meet up with you here in the rarefied atmosphere of BAFTA, where you're holding your London screenings presentations. Tell us a little bit about what you're presenting to buyers. I mean, I'm sure there's an awful lot of content, so you can't tell me everything, but give us a bit of a flavour of what you're revealing to buyers today at BAFTA.
So today we launch our new slate for the coming season. It's more than 50 titles all in. Focus today is on the big highlights, some big dramas, some big factuals. When you look at the drama slate, those are dramas from the UK, from Australia, from Canada, from the continent, from Israel. So it's a colorful, balanced mix, starting from very premium drama, going to very commercial drama. And on the factual side, we have also an amazing slate of high quality factual, covering a lot of spaces, a lot of genres. So like we'd have nature, wildlife, to politics, to war, to science, to fashion. So there the common denominator is quality.
Does that mean premium for you then? Your focus is more on premium end of factual?
Our focus is more on premium in general. Now the question is, and you can talk a lot about that, what is premium factual, right?
Yes.
It's like, and that is for me, I have a little bit liberal perspective when I talk about premium factual, meaning some of the stuff can also be a little bit, I wouldn't say pop docs, but can be a little bit louder commercial, right? Like we did last year, we did a show called Planet Sex with Cara Delevingne. And Cara has a huge social media follower base. She has a huge fan base. She is a model, a supermodel. She is an actress.
She's the most recognizable woman in the world, really, I suppose.
And then when you tackle a topic like sex and what defines our sexuality, is it our DNA, our parents, the religion, the world that surrounds us, and you go on that excursion together with Cara. That is a premium dog. It's a very loud premium dog, and that can have global reach and create headlines, and that would be very different from a stranger than fiction dog of set somewhere in a faraway place of this world where we would normally not go. So it's like we try to cover really both.
Well, you certainly had hit the headlines at MIPCOM with a lot of the A-list talent, including Cara that you brought down last October. So talking about London screenings for a moment, tell us about how this format works for you, because there are over 20 different distribution companies of all sizes, literally hundreds of buyers in town, probably thousands. But how does the format work for you then, and how do you prepare for this as a business?
It's a fantastic format. One of the reasons why it's a fantastic format is because we are one of the founding parents of this event. When it all came together about 5 years ago, and the early conversation started earlier, was basically what happened was that the marketing departments of Fremantle, of ITV, Banny J, all three came together, and the idea was found there is the BBC showcase, which happened somewhere outside of London, Liverpool, Brighton, wherever it happened at the time. And let's make use of the fact that we have all these buyers in town from all around the world. They come through London anyway when they go to the showcase. And that's where we set up our London screenings the first time. So we coordinated amongst us and what was the coordination was like, let's do it in the center of town. Let's do it at times which won't overlap and make it easy for the buyers. And that's how we started. And that was very well perceived. Now, fast forward by 5 years, it's like the event became much bigger. The BBC doesn't do their showcase somewhere outside. They do it in London in the same week with us now. Everybody moved into the same week. Makes for a more powerful event. We do, as you mentioned, Justin, we do have more distributors in town. So there's some overlap by now, probably.
Well, there must be. I think looking on TBI's map, they do this fantastic map with showing what's happening and when. And I think I counted there was over 20.
Today's Friday. This is the end of the week, right? Our slot, quote unquote slot, always has been Friday morning. Our intention was we want to be the guys at the end of the week before clients go out. And we want to send them out on a high. That's basically the idea. So today we had more than 500 people in here. We played in 3 theaters parallel. It was exciting. It was full. It was packed. We had very good reactions by the buyers. So the event works, And the other thing is not only does it work, it's also at a perfect time of the year. So we are now, this is, end of February, beginning of March. Some shows will launch rather soon. It's the beginning of the year. It's the time when you launch a show now, it's a perfect launch pad before the summer, way before the summer. And this is now the time where broadcasters put their last, they think about the schedule for fall. So it's perfect timing.
And is it mainly finished content that you're presenting, or is it a mix of...
That's a very good question. So the majority of the shows are finished. Now, what kind of shows do we present, right? So we present drama. We present documentary. Today, we also had an entertainment screening, and with all the new entertainment formats from Fremantle that are hitting the market now. So we try to cover all the genres, or most of the genres. The majority of the shows on the tape side, meaning factual and drama, are finished. When buyers come to the London screenings, they want to screen. Okay, so what they don't want, I think we all had our experiences with that, is they don't want to have a couch on the stage where 2 producers and 2 actors talk about a show that they're going to do tomorrow. What they want is they want to look at a screen and they want to see the show. They want to have it in concrete. They want to experience the show. And what they ideally also want is they want to screen full pilots. And that's what we did today as well. We screened full pilots today. And that was very well perceived as well. It's like, because when you're a buyer, you love television, you want to experience television. And the way to experience television is to watch television.
Clearly, the way that this works in terms of the timing and also the content that you're developing for this is become a very important sales event for you. Without any numbers, how does it rank in terms of investment for a distribution company the scale of yours, in a sort of a percentage? Can you give me any sort of indication about how important it is to you with all the other events around the calendar?
I can't give you percentages, but it is very important. There's no doubt about that. And the beauty about this setup is, however, that we control it, right? So if you're a distributor, you can go into small venue, you can go into big venue, you scale it. It's you, right? It's like in this particular situation, we don't go through a market organization company that does it all for us. We do it ourselves. And that's where on the cost side, we have it a little bit more under control. And on the other hand, when we see, like today, we anticipated the fact that we are oversubscribed and one cinema wouldn't be enough. So it's like we use the venue where we have the capability of then saying, okay, let's open up a second cinema or third cinema. There's a lot of flexibility about this event.
Okay. And one last question about screenings itself. So you were one of the founders, one of the big distribution companies that founded this event originally. So obviously you were agreed between yourselves the slots, the days that you would like between yourselves. So with all of these other, 15, 20 different distribution companies coming in, they just fit around you, right? Is that how it works? I mean, is there a sort of a grand council that talks about how you organize things over the week? Or is it just a case of, well, if you're a smaller company, make sure that you don't program something against, the same time as Fremantle or the same time against all 3?
I think to the extent possible, that people try to coordinate. The beauty about this event is really that it came out of a partnership between a couple of distributors. So we try to coordinate and arrange between the distributors. And that makes the event so strong. If we were to go against each other and compete with each other, that would take away from the attraction. So the buyers, people coming into town, they wouldn't appreciate that. So it's in everybody's interest to coordinate as much as possible.
Obviously, we're here at the beginning of March, coming to the end of Q1.
Yeah.
How are you finding the feedback from buyers? Because obviously, we know that it's a challenging market at the moment in many ways, and ways that must be very difficult for many distribution companies to forecast how things are going. So talking about the streamers in particular, how have you prepared for the situation that they're finding themselves in at the moment?
Well, you can prepare to a certain extent. It's like realistically, you have to have in mind that you're planning and working on a slate. When you look at the drama, very easily, it's like the preparation time before you're in production, 1 or 2 years, then you're in production, then you deliver. So some of the shows that we're presenting here today were born 2, 3, 4 years ago, right? And at that time, you don't know how the market evolves. Number one, what we do is we really focus on quality, 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 quality. So what are the people we work with? What's the talent? What's the track record? And how can we produce the best shows possible? Because even in a changing environment, if your show hits certain quality levels, there's always an opportunity. Okay.
There's always one buyer rather than maybe 3 or 4.
That might be like that. There might be times where the hot competition for property might be not as hot as during other times, right? But that's like we had that before. We go through, this is a cyclical industry. So when the advertising goes down, we suffer. When it goes up, it's like we all know how to live with that. One thing that I mentioned earlier, we basically have the last slot of the week. The beauty about that position is not only do we send them out with a memory of having our stuff in mind, our shows in mind, it also gives me or the team the opportunity to talk to buyers. How did you perceive all the other distributors?
Don't buy that one, buy this one.
No, that's not the point. The point is rather more like, what did you like most? And then like collecting impressions, right? And that was very interesting. And I won't dig too deep into that, but the feedback, let's say like this, that we got was very, very positive. And then the question with regards to the platforms, there is a little bit of a reset in the market. Obviously, we all know about it. We can read about it. It's like, and that reset started already last year in, when was it? March or April, when Netflix came around with their numbers. They were the first ones where there was a signal in the market that it's not just growth. And then suddenly the investors market said, well, it's not about growth anymore. It's about EBITDA. And there was this paradigm shift and following change of behavior from the side of some of the platforms, meaning they have to either cut budgets or they have to reassess their editorial line, like how they spend their money. The interesting now is, I believe that you now see the first platforms coming out of it and having a clearer perspective and already starting conversations about the direction and how and what. There's clearly light on the horizon. And then also already last year, how does a company like ours pivot? Second half of last year was a revival of the traditional television world. In a way, there was a lot more focus on traditional buyers, right? So we do a lot of business with commercial broadcasters, with public state broadcasters, with pay TV stations, like pay TV players like Canal Plus or Sky or Media Pro. They are in the market already since quite some more years. So they were on a different trajectory than compared to new platforms coming into Europe. That and their paradigm was, or their emphasis was, or focus was on growth very, very fast, right? So there was a little bit of shift of attention with which kind of buyers. And I think now we go into phase over the next 6 months where there's coming balance into the market.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a dynamic marketplace.
It's totally dynamic. That all being said, for the right kind of shows, everybody wakes up, right? So it's like, it's exceedingly hard to say that. For instance, over the last 2 years, we all said like, well, costume shows are difficult. And that has nothing to do with platforms changing their buying behavior. It was just also just a trend, okay? No historical drama, no costume. I bet everything, if you come with the right costume or historical drama tomorrow, everybody will buy it, right? So you always have to be very careful with these kind of predictions.
Thinking about streaming more generally, Fremantle's moved into the fast channel business quite significantly over the past couple of years. There's about a dozen different channels, is that right?
Yeah. For us, it started about 4 years ago with a channel called Buzzer in the US, and Buzzer is a game show.
That's channel. The game show channel.
That's a game show channel, like library episodes of various big game shows are on Buzzer. Background information, Fremantle is one of the biggest game show producers, full stop. Like shows like The Price is Right, Match Game, Family Feud, there's a lot. Some of these game show formats are from the 60s or 70s or the 80s, right? So also there's a very deep catalog, which is great for fast. So that's how it started. Beginning of last year, we rolled out a lot more channels. So we rolled out single IP channels like The Price is Right, or our favorite Baywatch, like also some single IP drama. Then over the last year, also we developed some genre channels like a cooking channel, a home channel, British drama channel, British comedy channel. From single IP to genre. In the US, we have about a dozen channels going. The US covers about 90% of the commercial value, of the advertising value of the global fast market. So the US is clearly a focus. That being said, we now have the first channels out in the UK, in Italy, in Germany, looking at other territories. Also in Australia, we have the first channel out. So I believe that fast market, which is at the moment 90-10, the 10% outside of the US is also on a growth trajectory.
For a business like yours, which has been traditionally focused on business to business, selling content to other businesses.
That point, Justin, that's exactly the point that fascinates us is here we are in the direct-to-consumer business. So when we launch a Jamie Oliver channel, like in the UK, which we did, and we launched it in the US also end of last year, that's a very strong channel, right? Jamie Oliver cooking, that for that consumer base couldn't be any better, right? So the beauty now is when we put our channel out, we see traffic numbers, we see the revenue numbers coming in because mostly it's in revenue share split with a platform. We launch, for instance, social media. We launch a YouTube clip channel to promote that Jamie Oliver channel, right? Or we have social media channels around our Baywatch channel, right? And then we do on YouTube, we do clips and we do Shark Week. And then while we put out these clips on YouTube, Shark Week Baywatch, all clips with sharks from Baywatch, surprise, surprise, and then we link that up to our fast channel and we see a tick, like we see the uptick in traffic on the fast channel. So it is absolutely fascinating to experience and work in that environment where you are in direct touch with the consumer.
When it comes to digital marketing, digital promotion and digital distribution of content, it's very much a learning process, isn't it? It's a case of you try something new. It's all about trying and testing and learning and moving on.
Trying and testing. Now on the digital side, so fast for us and for most in the market, it's pretty new, right? It's a year. I mean, fast is there. I mentioned it earlier with Buzzer. We went in there 4 years ago. We were one of the first ones, but it is a relatively new market compared to the digital space. YouTube, Facebook is almost a mature market, very developed market. And as Fremantle, we have way more than 1,000 social media channels, and we are active in YouTube and Facebook and TikTok and all the other platforms since day one. While some of our competitors, when YouTube and Facebook came out and put clips out there, went and had the clips been taken down, looking at it as piracy, we looked at it as like, well, this is actually promotion if done well. Right. So let's look at it more careful. So this could
manage it proactively.
Let's manage it proactively. So this could be actually promotion for our brands. And if it really, really works out, it could create advertising revenue. So there is also, it could create revenue and bottom line for us. So, and now in the digital space, we have an insane reach, like way more than 2 billion views a month. And so we build brands, we create revenues, brand awareness. And the other beauty is when you think about something like Britain's Got Talent, as an example, America's Got Talent. Those shows are getting produced mostly in annual cycles, right? So you don't have the show on telly or on the platform all year round. While when you build the right kind of social media talent show focused channel on YouTube and Facebook, you can have the brand being present all year round and you keep it up there, right? So it's like for you as the guardian of your brand, great opportunity.
That's clearly been a big investment for Fremantle in terms of time and outlay. The advertising market is a little bit soft when it comes to digital and social at the moment. And we know that America is by far, as you mentioned, 90-10 of the market. When do you think we're going to see significant income coming from purely advertising within the fast market?
There is already decent revenues coming through, right? And then it's a question, I think the interesting question will be the non-US markets. I mean, the US market will also in fast will have pretty strong growth rates over the next couple of years. Now, what's happening in the US over the last year is there's a lot more channels out there. So let's assume for a second the market grows by 30%, but you have 50% more channels. Then it's a question, what kind of channels are out there? And how is that more in advertising revenue divided by the more in channels? So if you don't watch out, your individual channel might make less money next year than last year, because even in an overall growing market, because there's a lot more channel out there in the universe. Then for us, it's about, looking at what kind of channels we put out there. How do we program these channels? How do we promote these channels? How do we market these channels? How do we build a slate of channels? How do we promote between the channels? Create a channel universe. Like going back 10, 20 years ago when somebody, operated a universe of classic cable TV channels. Basically, this is cable TV. It's just cable TV OTT, over the top.
How do you handle advertising? Is the advertising handled purely by the platform itself, or do you actually have sales teams yourself?
There's multiple models. So the classic model is the platform sells the advertising, and there's a 50-50 or 60-40, 40-60, whatever. That's to be negotiated, the split. It's not always 50-50. There's a split of the revenues between the platform and the channel operator. There could also be models where instead of getting a share of the advertising revenue generated by the platform, you share the advertising inventory and you sell it yourself as a channel operator. And the way to do that is you could either have your own sales team, or then you could use that inventory and hand it over to another media agency who does that job for you. Then there are hybrid models, where maybe you do a revenue share deal so the platform sells the advertising inventory. However, you do have the right, what we call quote unquote backfill right. So unsold inventory not sold by the platform, you might find a buyer for it, right? And all that, what I described, is only for the model of owned and operated channels, meaning we put the channel together and then we send the signal of the channel to various platforms. The other model, on the other end, is you simply license your show to the platform, and the platform puts together the channel. And then they sell the advertising and they keep the advertising revenues. There's so many different models in this. It's exciting. It gives you flexibility.
And just one final one on FAST then. Do you see a time when we might find some of these platforms like a Samsung or one of the many others out there looking for exclusivity? I mean, because we see channel distribution across many different platforms, don't we? I mean, is that happening now? And is that something that you're involved with, any sort of exclusivity on channels on FAST?
We do it. I don't want to mention individual samples, but we do it already. So it could be that we launch a channel and we put it exclusive on a platform for a certain period of time. Reason why is because that platform, for instance, gave us an upfront minimum guarantee, as an example, right? Could be other reasons as well. The general model, that all being said, however, is really a non-exclusive syndication model. You take that one channel that you own and operate and syndicate it out across various platforms.
One last question, just coming back on factual. Yeah. How do you see COVID or post-COVID, how has the changes we've had in the last 4 years or so affected both the demand and the supply of factual content, and how are you reacting to that?
I think I'm not sure whether COVID had too much of an influence, to be honest. It's like because when you think about it, COVID had a big impact on all kind of production, more on drama than maybe on factual in a way, depending on what kind of factual you're talking about. If you do a factual mainly based on footage, you could do it during lockdown, right? We wanted to do Planet Sex with Cara Delevingne already 2 years earlier, and then came COVID, and we had to wait because we said from the beginning we don't want a footage show. We want Cara to travel to America, to Japan, to all these countries, right? So COVID had an impact overall. I think when you look at the documentary market, what's interesting at this very moment, what we all have to think about it is what kind of documentary you're focusing on. And when you look at the last couple of festivals, so we had, for instance, we also do movies, doc movies and also drama movies, right? And we won a couple of awards over the last couple of months with some of our movies, which is really exciting. There has been a time 3-4 years ago when you had your movie at Sundance, your doc movie, and it would be out there on a Thursday or Friday. By Sunday, you would have your offer from a platform to buy that movie. Last Sundance Festival, it didn't happen to any of the movies, right? So the platforms had been very reserved and
more cautious.
Very cautious, right? So that's where you rather have to think about, like what kind of movies or topics are you going for? Where could it sit? Is it something that can only sit on specific platforms, or do you go for something that could have a live on various platforms, or also local broadcasters, right? And then you have a little bit more flexibility when you think about the client base.
There's lots more I could ask you, Jens, but I know you've got to go. Thank you very much for spending time with me
today. It's been a pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Justin.
So I always think it's important to get the view of a buyer here at London Screenings. I'm here with Ulrike Brandt and Karsten Schrader, who are from the factual acquisitions team at WeltN24's. Welcome to TellyCast, Karsten and Ulrike.
Hi.
Hi, nice to be here with you.
It'd be really interesting to hear your perspective of London Screenings. We've never done a show around London Screenings before, so it's all for you. It's all for the buyers at the end of the day. So, Ulrike, is this your first London Screenings, or have you been here at any of the events in the past few years?
Yeah, well, actually, I think it's our third or fourth time at the London Screenings, and I totally like the development it took over the last years. So in the beginning, it was just like a handful companies who kind of organized themselves, and you had one in the morning, one in the afternoon, maybe one in the evening. But now it got so huge and so important for us that actually we decided this year not to go to MIP TV, because the London Screening is so important for us to see, like, everyone we need to see. And now the BBC even joined it on Monday and Tuesday, and we don't go to Liverpool anymore. So it's amazing for us, and having other French markets like Rendezvous de Paris at Sunnyside, we actually don't need the MIP in spring anymore.
Right, okay, so this has now become your key buying event of the springtime, presumably.
Well, actually, it's not as much about buying, but to talk to people and deepen relationships and actually seeing everyone, and also socializing with other buyers. And it's even more interesting than the actual buying event in Cannes, because you have more time for people. You come around. I like how it's organized, that you kind of hop from place to place. So you're on the outside, you have the chance to experience the city as well, and to deepen the relationships to the salespeople, actually.
You're here all week, are you? Are you here is it from Monday to Friday? Are you coming on the Sunday or something?
Yeah, actually, we arrived early Monday morning to start in all fresh, and then we'll leave on Friday afternoon.
Karsten, how do you find the format of these events? Because we've got, I don't know how many distributors here, but we've got probably, let's say 20, 25. As Ulrike was saying, they're organised morning, evening and afternoon. How does that work for a broadcaster such as yourself? Because I know that there's also scripted and unscripted along with a lot, these distributors have their presentations. So how do you navigate your way around all of these different events at the right time and make sure you're seeing the right presentations at the right time?
Well, we only are interested in unscripted. So we made a schedule ahead a few weeks ago ahead of the London Screenings. Many events are by invitation only, so we choose the ones we're interested in. And the good thing is you have a lot of different events. Sometimes it's just screening trailers and sizzles. Sometimes it's whole episodes. Sometimes it's just socializing and networking events. So we are meeting many of the larger companies, and we have private meetings with the smaller ones or with producing companies. And I think it's much more relaxed than it is in traditional markets like MIP, because you don't have back-to-back meetings every half hour and you have to run around in between. All the events take place in the same district and in Soho. So it's nice to have a little walk in between the events. You have time to really deep dive in conversations. It's much more relaxed, I would say.
We're here beginning of March, end of February. Do you have a buying cycle at WeltN24? Do you commit to a certain amount of content at a certain time of the year? Or I'm trying to understand where we are in the calendar. Does this work particularly well for you or not so well?
Well, I think we don't really have a buying schedule that we need to buy a certain amount of hours at a certain time in the year. But we need to be in personal contact with people who are relevant for us. And so we now have a more or less a 4-month rhythm between the London screenings. Then in summer we have the Sunnyside in La Rochelle. And in October we have MIPCOM, which we will still attend. So it's every 4 months you have personal contacts with the people to discuss new projects, to maybe sometimes to close a deal, but it's more about getting new ideas, hopping on projects early on.
Tell us a little bit about WeltN24 then. I mean, tell us about the channel and the content that you feature.
Welt is an information channel founded in 2000 in Munich. A little later we moved to Berlin. We have extensive live news slots and extensive documentary slots. That's why it's called an information channel. Our audience is more or less male skewed. So what we are looking for is science and technology, logistics, what you could call boys' toys. Everything which is related to space works very well for us, like astronomy, like space travel, even UFOs, search for extraterrestrial life, and so on. We also have history, especially history of the first half of the 20th century, Second World War. Also ancient history, Romans, Greeks, Chinese, and so Egyptians, and so on. And some wildlife, which is not traditional op-docs, but what our audience loves is creepy, dangerous, deadly creatures like Australia's top 10 deadly predators or something like that.
And how much content do you acquire a year, Ulrike?
Well, at the moment, as we are stricken by economy, it's not as much as we used to, but in a normal year, we would have the need for 250 hours of content, which could be ready-mades, pre-buys, and also renewals from shows we already licensed before.
Okay, so you do commit to pre-buys as well as actual finished content?
Yes, we do.
Okay, interesting. And just picking up on your point about you're probably looking to acquire less this year. Do you get the sense that the overall commercial picture of the industry, do you get the same impression from other broadcasters that they're starting to just pull back a little bit from acquiring content?
Yes, unfortunately, it's something we discussed on a larger scale while being here, especially because of ad sales going down. If you're not a pubcaster and don't get governmental money or viewer-based money, we are dependent on ad sales, and we find that a lot of companies don't appreciate, since we're a news channel anyway and have a lot of news content, catastrophes, war. We have the earthquake in Turkey, we have Russia and Ukraine. They don't tend to put ads into the news. And also in the evenings, it's harder to actually put ads there if the documentary has not like a feel-good vibe to it. And so we also have to be very careful in what to acquire. And also the companies are always preparing for crisis, right? And always try to get their employees best through crisis. And so there are a lot of cutbacks in actually acquiring documentaries.
The last few years have been unpredictable, to say the least. How has that affected those buying patterns over the last, say, 3 years? I mean, when you were in lockdown, how did that affect your buying patterns as a channel? Presumably a lot of catalogue content.
Yeah, I think the producing companies changed their way of producing. They didn't travel so much. They hired local teams. They developed strategies to make great shows, but without having to travel so much. So what we found during the pandemic was kind of a new type of storytelling, which is you start with a mystery, maybe a location, an unknown location, an abandoned place, a strange, bizarre object or something like that. and then you get somebody who knows, and you debunk little by little the secret of the abandoned location, of the strange object, of a code, encrypted code or something like that.
This is a new format that you think has been developed. That's interesting.
Maybe the idea came up a little bit before the pandemic, but it exploded. Lots of shows are made that way today, and many of them work very well for us.
Gradually unveiling the mystery as you go through the half-hour Raw show. And in terms of the format of shows that you're acquiring, are they mainly 1 hours? And are you looking for series, or is it just more one-offs and half-hours?
Well, we have both one-offs or 2-hour shows and short series up to, let's say, 10 episodes a season. We can program both.
Karsten, Ulrike, I will let you get off. We're here at the Quintus Studios session here in Soho. So I hope you've seen lots of content that you're going to acquire, and you've had a very successful week here. So thanks very much for joining me on TellyCast.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
So my next guest on this London screening special is Gerrit Kemming from Quintus Studios. Gerrit, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks a lot.
So London screenings for you, obviously we're here at your event, you're hosting an event for buyers, but you have twice as many reasons, I guess, from a channel, for example, for being here, because you're not only a channel owner, but you're a distributor as well. So it's about acquisitions, but it's also about sales this week. Tell us about how you're finding London screenings and how it works for you as a business with sort of dual roles in the marketplace.
Yeah, so we're here with a full team, and the different team functions or team members with the different functions, they are here for different reasons. So there is our head of acquisition being here for the full week, joining, the other distributors' events for getting into the new content of these distributors. Getting into talks with the sales people of the distributors. That's Lena. And then there's Anouk here, who's our head of sales. The event was mainly to present our new slate of new Quintus originals with the help of our content club that we showcase to the people and introduce to the people again, where we feel and realize that it gets more and more traction and people really enjoy and like the way how the content club works. And so we present this and our new slate and ready-made programming, as well as buying content from the distributor. So you're right, we're here for several reasons. Yeah.
Okay, and you're here all week? Are you here for, literally Monday till Friday?
Our head of acquisition is here for a week. We're just here for 3 days, so our event is like the peak of it. And then there's so many people in this city at the moment that we use the other 2 days for just having meetings, joining other events. Yeah.
So on the acquisition side then, you recently launched a new engineering channel, free documentary engineering. You acquired over 50 hours of content for that channel, which is essentially a YouTube channel, and that you may be looking to port over onto different digital channels as well. Are you coming to this market looking to acquire a similar amount of content for your existing channels? Because I know you have a number of different channels. Or are you looking to acquire content for as yet unannounced and unlaunched channels? Or tell us how your acquisition strategy is coming into London screenings.
Yeah, both, right? So, we need a content stream of a couple of 100 hours per year for all of our existing channels, including the engineering channel, but also including all the already more mature channels as History, Nature, our main free documentary channel. And that is across YouTube, Facebook, Snap, or Snapchat, TikTok, meanwhile, even in all different sorts of length. So that's the existing channels. And then we always, because the channels really work well, and we always plan to launch more channels in long form, mid form, short form. So we're always looking and analyzing what's out there, what could create a new channel for us.
And how have you seen your digital channels then performing over the last couple of years? Because obviously they're growing, but are you seeing a significant uplift in terms of subscribers and interest across the digital platforms? Have you seen a marked step change over the last 6 months or year or 2 years? Give us an idea of how your channels are growing and maybe why you think that might be?
So, I mean, obviously, as for all VOD businesses, the pandemic was a big pusher, of course, right? So, and that grew our channels a lot, the channels that existed during that period. And now it's more a question of how many channels, how broad can your offer, like your overall offer of content, how broad can that be, right? And how many people can you reach? So we're constantly growing with a rate of probably 100K subscribers a month across all channels, right? At least on YouTube, and then it's additional on other platforms. And that is our strategy going forward, to be as broad as possible. So more channels, because it just works and there is demand for it. There's the audience out there in as many forms as possible, because a documentary is not just a 48-minute show, right? It's also a mixture of like plenty of stories and 1 minute stories and 1 minute great situations that you can present as a short form documentary. So we're not only thinking in that long form anymore. It's just a bunch of stories that is presented to us.
And tell us about the Content Club, because I know that is something that you've been running for about a year now, I think.
Actually, the digital version, yes, but we started even pre-COVID. We started this, that's where it actually comes from, as a physical version with a couple of broadcasters, and that's where we realized how valuable it is for the project and the producer and also the buyer from the channels to actually sit together and discuss a project. Because sometimes there is an idea for the project, but there is like some strings in that project where a certain buyer thinks that doesn't work for us, and then he neglects it, right? But getting into the conversation with other buyers and the producer and us, we can just shape it so that it works for everyone in the conversation. And that's why this is very helpful. And that we realized that in a physical form pre-COVID, and now this is the digital version, even broader, with a lot more buyers, a lot more territories, a lot more projects. And yeah, I mean, that's what we realize. And the feedback is from everyone that it is very helpful because of the reasons that I just mentioned.
When it comes to producers and how they're approaching your different business model when you're looking to create original content, we saw you recently announced a project called Beyond Borders with Peninsula TV, which is obviously performing well for you. Are you finding that producers are becoming more and more open to discussing models that are slightly different? Because yours is, and it requires an amount of investment on a producer's side to look at the long-term earnings of a project as opposed to an initial commission. Are you seeing producers becoming more open, as now we're finding, there's a whole amount of turbulence in the market with so much less commissioning going on? Are you finding that perhaps now is the right time for producers to consider different business models?
Well, I mean, that's, you probably need to ask the producers that question if they think it is. But yes, what we realize is definitely that they are more and more open to different models and approaches. I hear more and more that there is no alternative to be open, because the model that they are used to is not working in the same scale as they used to have it, right? The question is, to what extent can a established producer be flexible? And yes, he might be able, because he has a constant cash flow, he might be able to invest into projects. But there is still the old production structure in regards to equipment, in regards to the teams that will be sent out. And so we go for all models, right? We go for the old commission thing, we go for the old pre-sale model. But what we also do, and this is probably only for the very flexible producers, is that we don't think in projects anymore, but we think in production journeys more. So what we realize in our channels, for example, there is different spots on this planet that have so interesting stories to tell. So Africa is a spot that works very well for a couple of channels in our channel network, right? So instead of, let's say, behind bars, instead of like producing a episode in Africa and then the next episode in Australia and the next episode in the US, we think about what kind of stories are in Africa that that are interesting for our channels. There might be a prison show, there might be a deadly road, there might be a train journey that's interesting, there might be a way to school, which is interesting in this one place. So we rather go there with one team, being there for 3 weeks, shooting all of that, coming back with 5 hours of long-form content, 25 hours of mid-form content, 50 pieces of 1 minute content, and that is our production.
That's really interesting. So you're actually looking at your audience in terms of what they want to consume and the way that you can be more efficient to produce a whole wealth of content across a whole series. That's really interesting. I've never heard of that approach before.
It only works for a setup that we have, right? So because that probably doesn't work for TV really. It only works when you do this 6 times, because then you have a series again of toughest prisons, of the most deadly train journeys, of, you name it, right? And then in the long term, it also becomes interesting for TV, whereas we monetize and refinance the pure investment from each journey, right? It's a short-term investment for us, but with our data, with our channels and the knowledge from the data about what the audience like, we know this is going to perform on our channels. We know how much we can invest. And if that's in the pocket, then everything else that we might be able to exploit later in terms of television or even further platforms, that comes into the profit region, right?
Gerrit, thank you for spending time with us on this week's London screening special, and I'm sure you're going to be out going to various events this evening. Are you finding the networking? Are you finding that there's a lot of people here that you're having opportunity to catch up with?
Totally. I mean, you just bump into people on the streets, and it's just so dense here in Soho. So it's a really lovely event.
Okay, thanks, Gerrit. Good luck with the rest of the screenings.
Thanks a lot.
Well, that's about it for this week's TellyCast London screening special. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please share it with friends and colleagues. And don't forget to check out TellyCast's sister brand, dropmedia.co.uk, for all of your digital-first content news. This week's show was recorded in London and edited by Ian Chambers. Until next week, stay safe.